you were working at Hilti, right? And then you decided, okay, I will take an MBA. How that thought came to your mind?
Initial thought was, one, being bored with work and not being challenged enough around. Two, there's people that you look up to usually, right? And it could be your parents, it could be a colleague at work that you've learned from, that you go to when you have a question. So one of those people was a colleague of mine named Mustafa, and he started his MBA 6 months before me. So when I saw him start the MBA, he would share the journey with me. He'll come to the office and he'll talk about, I have this assignment, I have that assignment. And to me, that was, okay, that's interesting. He'll talk about economics. He'll talk about finance, things that I had no clue about, but I'm a very curious person.
New challenge.
Yeah, new challenge. Like, okay, that's interesting. I want to know more. So then I was like, okay, if he's getting this out of his MBA journey, I want the same thing. And I think that would be the thing that's going to challenge me and fill that gap that I had, basically, that hole.
You are the only male in a female team. How does that feel?
I came from the opposite. So the industry that I was in, construction. My day was basically going from site to site, carrying my tool bag, wearing the safety helmet and everything. So it was male dominated. Coming here, it's female dominated, or at least the team that I'm in. So that was a bit of a shock. But in terms of working, I don't think there's any difference between working with a man versus working with a woman.
So it's the same. It was only hard at the beginning to adapt it.
Yeah, so you're a product of your environment, right? So if your environment is one thing and you're taken out of that environment and you put into something else, initially it's a shock. But the minute that you get past that shock and you start to really think about, okay, so is it really different? Not really. We all have brains. We all think. We all analytical. We all so not too much different.
So to come to our first conclusion is that you can say that MBA was give you better view on for the life, give you more experience personally and professionally.
Yeah, I think I learned from the MBA more on the personal than on the professional. I mean, the professional really, it was kind of the door opener. It was the connection that I made in an MBA that made it possible for me to move from one industry to another. So one conclusion that I've reached in my life is that one day I'm going to have a PhD in economics. I don't know how. There's a lot of things before I get to that point, but I will. And the reason being, as an economist, what I love about them is they see the world from so many angles. So what I said about diversity, that's like having diversity of people in one mind. Mm-hmm. An economist has to understand psychology, sociology, finance, market forces. They have to understand even nature, because like now you have global warming and climate change that affects economies, affects the world. They have to understand politics. So that, for me, is, as a curious person, is a dream. So that's a goal that one day hopefully I'll achieve, and that came out of doing an MBA.
So what kind of challenges you faced during your career, other than changing the career and the risk? Like, what is the biggest challenge that you can think about now that was like the turnover?
Biggest challenge, myself. I'll elaborate. I think the biggest obstacle in our ways is usually our own selves. The way we think, the boxes we put our own selves in. So I always identified as someone who's closed up, introverted, wouldn't be able to
socialize.
You know, I mean, like this right now, what we're doing with so many people looking would have been a nightmare for me 5-6 years ago. So that was my biggest challenge, kind of being who I am. But I think just jumping into the deep end. So the first jump was going into sales, right? And that was the first real challenge. And I remember still till today, 9 months in, I called my manager and I was like, okay, let's have coffee. And I told my manager, I want to leave. I want to go back to engineering. Like I got to the point of saying, like, I can't do this anymore. And that was me, right? My manager, God bless her, at the time, she sat me down and she gave me reassurance. She gave me practical reassurance from the things that I have achieved already. And she said, this is you just panicking. This is just you freaking out, getting in your own way. Look what you've already accomplished. And like, this has only been 9 months. So then I was like, okay, I was a bit calmer and I continued. And I think that was the best decision for me. I don't think I'll be able to do what I'm doing today as an enrollment director if I hadn't gone through that.
Okay. So what kind of skills that let you reach to this point?
I'd say two. Self-reflection. I'm always able to sit in a room by myself and look at what I've done and identify what I did good, but more importantly, what I did wrong. So being self-reflective plus self-critical. So it's a two-edged sword, being self-critical. You can be too self-critical on yourself to the point where you run yourself down. But then if you are able to balance it, being self-critical is the best fuel for you to get better and better and better every day. So look, you get into a situation, don't think of, oh, this happened, this is bad, this is wrong, why did this happen? The question should be, what could I have done to make a better outcome of the situation? That is always something that I think helped me get to where I am. And second thing, I think, is just be a good person. So I have one motto in life. Always do good, or at least do no harm. If every action that you take is within those confines, you'll be good, I think. Pretty much. Previously, work was about, okay, you study one thing in education, you get a bachelor's degree in that, and that's what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life. In the future, I'm not even sure if universities and education is going to remain in the sense of getting a bachelor's and a master's and so on. It's going to be more about specific skill sets in specific areas. And what I think is in the future, you start to see universities adapt to this, some sooner than others, but eventually education is going to go towards that, where some people will still get a bachelor's and a master's and a PhD, maybe go to the academic side, come up with theories and so on. That will always be a section of society that's needed. But a lot of the way we function, it's going to be about getting a certification in coding, for example. And then it's not going to be a career per se of working for a company. It's going to be the gig economy, which means you will have a skill set and you will not be employed by one person. Your skill set will be used with this company, this company, this company, this company, this company, this company. So yeah, I think you're onto something there. The word career, as we know it, is changing. Thought I was only going to say nice things about myself today. Failures in life, yes, of course I do. Nobody is going to go through life without failures. Professionally speaking, or let's go even before that. So I studied engineering, and I was on a scholarship when I initially started. Started very well, high GPA, maintained the scholarship, etc., etc. Part of the requirement to continue was to maintain a certain GPA. My first failure was failing to maintain that GPA. So I dropped below, and the last year and a half of my education, unfortunately, my father had to carry the load for me, where it could have been another way if I hadn't failed that way. Second failure was at work. My first job, after a year and a half in, I was working on a design for a project in Saudi, and it was a very small mistake, and I remember it to today. But that mistake ended up costing the company around 1.2 million dirhams.
Wow.
How did I overcome it? I had a very nice boss. Let's put it that way. I didn't get fired, but so he's the first role model I was talking about earlier from my managers, right? And his approach to failure and to challenges and so on is something that I live by now. That's why I said to you earlier, failure is, so what if you fail? He told me that. I was beating myself about it, right? Because I was thinking, oh my God, what's going to happen? I'm going to get fired. I cost the company this much. He sat me down because he saw how much I was freaking out. He told me, okay, did anyone die? I told him no. He said, okay, you know how much this company makes in a month, in a year? So 1.2 million to them was peanuts, right? I mean, listen, as long as you learn from it. Like for me, if you make a mistake like this, it's okay. If you make it twice, it's still okay. If you make it 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, then you can start to worry. So failures and mistakes are okay as long as you learn from them and they make you a better person. Question. Very good question. So my first role was a very technical role, right? So I learned to be organized. I learned to be analytical, to look at something, break it down, analyze it, figure out, okay, what are the things that make it up, and so on and so on. So think of that as a skill set that I learned. We'll get to how I'm using it. The second role was taught me how to get out of my comfort zone, and taught me to appreciate getting out of my comfort zone. Because up until that point, I never tried getting out of my comfort zone. As a person, my individual proclivity as an individual, it's very safe. I took personality tests. I'm always a cautious, quiet type, etc., etc., etc. That for me was the first time I got out of my comfort zone, and I learned to love it because of that. And I think what happened after that, jumping from that to business development to education, etc., etc., was because of that. If that didn't happen, I don't think I would have got the taste of it. The next job was being a business developer. That was when I was living in Abu Dhabi, working in Ruwais. Oil and gas projects are cyclical, right? So there are times when there's a lot of oil and gas production and so on and so on. So new projects, new ventures are not happening. The focus is on production of oil. If you remember, oil prices dropped. So when oil prices drop, that's when you have a lot of new projects come in and so on. So I was working in that specific role during the time when there was a lot of oil production, so there was not too many projects. So I learned how to survive tough times. I wasn't meeting my targets. I was under constant pressure. I was driving 4 hours a day to get to the sites and back, working on things that were very long term. So it taught me to not focus necessarily on the now, but work now for the long term.